Hello, my name is Chris Wright from OneSpatial. Here at OneSpatial we believe that Geocortex Essentials helps you do more with ArcGIS web mapping technologies faster, at less cost and at less risk, and we believe better. OneSpatial is the UK and Ireland distributor for Geocortex Essentials. We have a wide-ranging, large and growing portfolio of users, including the Environment Agency, United Utilities, Lambeth Borough Council and Royal Sun Alliance, to name but a few. Today I'm going to show you how to build a website from scratch. This will involve adding ArcGIS map services to a site. It will involve adding viewers to a site, and once we've had the viewers in place and we can show you those, we'll then go on to further configure our site to suit our needs. To begin, we log into our Essentials Manager. Once we have logged in, we will see our existing sites in place, but we're going to add in a new site. So we click on Add New Site. We need to give the site a display name. And optionally give it a description. We click Next, and then we're going to create an empty website, so we click Next again, and then finally we click Finish. We're now at a position where we have created a site and we now need to start adding map services to this site. To add in a map service to our site, we can either import map services from previous sites, or we can add a new map service. We're going to click on Add Map Service to add in a new map service. We then need to give the URL to our ArcGIS server REST endpoint. There is autocomplete on this, so if you've used an ArcGIS REST endpoint before, it will immediately be shown to us. So I'm going to select this one here. And we then get presented with all the map services and feature services that are available on this ArcGIS server. I'm going to use some data from Staffordshire County Council, and it's some foreground data here. I've also got some master map data and some Mr. SID data. Initially I'm going to select my master map data set, and I add this to my map. So my master map features map service is now added to my map and I can use it. So I apply changes and save site. What I want to do now is I want to add another map service, which is going to be my foreground data. So again, I can just start typing. I can select the ArcGIS REST endpoint, and then I can select the data that I want, which is going to be the OneSpatial foreground data. Here you can see the foreground data that I want to overlay on my master map data. I'm going to apply my changes, and I'm going to save my site. At this point, we've now got some map services in our site and we've started to configure it. What we can do now is we can add a viewer to this site and then view the data as we've got it set up. To do this, I click on Viewers and click on Add Viewer. I give the viewer a name. I'm going to add a Silverlight viewer, so I'll give the viewer a name of Silverlight. And then I select the Silverlight viewer from the list. I then click OK. And I've now configured a viewer for my site. The viewer has a URL which I can click to launch the viewer. So now we have a viewer with our data in it that we selected earlier. So very quickly we've built a site here and got some data into the outside world. And by default the viewer has a layers menu here, so I can turn on and off things like address points, building assets, so on and so forth, or I can turn the entire layer off. I can also set the transparency of the layer, which makes it a little bit nicer on the eye. We also have a legend, and you can see how the data is made up here from the legend. We also have an I want to menu, which allows us to do a few things: go to the home panel, return to the initial map view, and so on and so forth. We have a search box here, which is a Google-like search, so we can start typing in attribute names and it will go and search for them for us. We have a toolbar here, so under the toolbar we have a few tools. We can identify objects, we can go back to the initial view, so if I click on that we get the initial view shown on the screen here. If I click on identify, we can click at a point on the map, it will drill down and find objects on the map for us. So you can see there we've found an education area, which is shown in yellow. We've found a topographic area, which is shown in yellow, and we've also got a building asset, which is shown in yellow. So that's a basic toolbar that we get out of the box. And we have a scale bar down the bottom here. What we might want to do now is we might want to customize the viewer and the site in more detail. So let's go ahead now and start doing some customization. There are lots of things we can do to customize our website to make it look and feel how we want. So let's go back to our Essentials Manager and go back to our site, and then maybe go to our map layer. So these are where our map services are. So what we might want to do is set the initial extent of the data. So we were quite zoomed out there initially. What we can do is we can click on the set initial extent box and then move the data so that we get a window looking at the data as we want to initially see it. So maybe something like that as our initial extent. We click on the OK button, and then we click on Save Site to save our initial extent settings. What we also might want to do, as we saw the foreground data is quite bright, being solid when we go in, so we might want to make it a little bit transparent. So we can click on the display settings for the foreground data, and we can turn the data transparency down a little bit so that we can see through the data. Maybe set it to 50%. We'll apply those settings and we'll save the site at this point. So let's have a look at what those changes have made. So if we go back to our viewers and we fire up our viewer, you'll see that we start at the area that we set up, and you'll notice that the foreground data is now slightly duller on the map, so the whole map looks a little cleaner and a little tidier. But there's further customization we can do to our site. So for example, we might want to add in a print template so that we can print the map. So what I can do is I can go down to print templates and I can add a print template. I can give the template a name. I'll call this A4 landscape. And then I can select from an existing set of print templates to add in to our site. So I'm going to add the A4 landscape print template. So I add in the template, then I apply my changes and save my site. Now there's a number of configurations we can do to the print template to further customize it for our site. So I click the edit template button. I can set the formats that I want the user to be able to select from just by toggling them on here. I can set the default output format. I'll leave that as PDF. I can set the scale bar units. I'm going to set them to meters. I can apply those details. Then I can create some map scales. So I can add a map scale, and if I say a scale of 1 to 1250, and we'll have a display name of 1 to 1250, I can click on OK. That's now added into the map scale. I'll add in another scale. I'll make it 2500 and set that to be 1 to 2500, and I'll add that in. What I'll also do is I'll set the default max scale to be the 1 to 1250 option. I'll apply those changes, and then I'll go to the resolutions tab, and I can add a resolution in. By default we get 96 dots per inch, so we'll call that one a low resolution. I'll add in a 200 dots per inch, and we'll call that medium. And then I'll add in a high resolution, and we'll have that at 300 dots per inch. These can be, of course, whatever settings you wish. And we'll have our default resolution as low. If we can optionally add text fields to our plot template. This could, for example, ask the user for a title for the plot, or for some notes to add into the plot. And we can also add grids. I'm going to add a measured grid to my plot template. I'm going to have the display name as British National Grid. It's going to have 6 intervals on the map, so I click OK, and we will leave the default grid as none, and this means the user will need to select a grid if they want to use one. So I'll apply my changes there, and then I'll save my site. So let's have a look now what we've got. If we run up our viewer, and we can now start to add in a plot as part of our site. So under our toolbar we now have a print map option available to us. If I click print map, you can see it brings up a form here which allows me to select the layout. We've only got one, which we've just added. We can select the format that we want, we can select the resolution, we can optionally add a grid, so I'll add a grid in, and then we can optionally have a scale that we want to plot at. We also have the ability to have a preview extent, so if I click on there, you can see this is the area that's going to be plotted on my piece of paper. And what I might want to do is actually focus the data around this building here, so I can move the data so that it fits inside my preview extent and shows the object that I want. I can then, when I'm happy, click print map. The system goes away and it generates my print. I can then open this print and have a look at it in PDF format. So you can see here that we've got our map area. You can see we've got our grids drawn on it. You can see this says demonstration plot. We've got a logo here, we've got a scale bar, and so on and so forth. This is where an overview map would be in the top right corner here. We're going to add an overview map in a second as part of our customization. So we've already now got a viewer on our map, we've got some map services in our data set, and we've now added a print template. So let's go and do some further customization. So we go back to our Essentials Manager, and one of the things we might want to do, as we saw from the plot there, would be to add in an overview map. Adding an overview map is very similar to adding in map services to the main map. We click on the overview map button and we basically add a map service to the overview map. So we'll do as we did before, and we'll look for our REST endpoint. We'll select the REST endpoint, and I think what we'll do is we'll add in the Mr. Sid data as our overview map, and we'll add this. We'll apply the changes and we'll save our site. So we now have an overview map added to our system, added to our site. So let's go and have a look at our overview map. Again, we need to fire up the viewer because we've changed our site. And our overview map is down in the corner here, and you can see where we are with respect to the overview shown in the blue outline. Also, if we generate a plot now, you will see that we get an overview map with a red rectangle representing where we are in the world. So that was adding an overview map into our site. As you can see though, we have a very minimal toolbar with just a few buttons on it. So let's go back to our Essentials Manager and reconfigure the toolbar to have more buttons available to us. So back in our Essentials Manager, if we go to our Viewers button and then we edit our Silverlight viewer, we can go to the toolbar menu and we can load a preset toolbar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load the Web GIS Full. The one we currently have is the standard one, but I'm going to load the Web GIS Full toolbar. So I click on that, and you can see now we have much more available to us in our toolbar. So we'll save our site and we'll go and have a look at this new toolbar in our viewer. So now under our toolbar we have more tabs available to us, including data sources, where we can load shape files and CSV files and go to Bing Maps and Google Maps. We have further find operations, so we can find by rectangle or polygon. We have some query options available to us. We can add markups to the map, so we might want to add a markup and then generate a plot. So for example, I might want to add an arrow here and then add a piece of text that says, "What is this?" Having added this to my map, I can then go and generate my plot as I did before. I'll just preview the extent to make sure that my data I want to see is in my print area, and then when I open my print, you'll see that I get the arrow with the text on my print. I'll just clear those markups on the map. We also have analysis tools available to us, and we have editing tools available to us. However, in this data set we have no layers that are available for editing because we've only loaded map services. We haven't loaded any feature services. What we may also want to do at this point is add some reporting capability to our site. So for example, I might want to generate reports on the buildings in my data. So let's go ahead and add a building report to our site. To add the building report to our site, we again go back to our Essentials Manager. We go to the Site tab and we select the Map option. This presents us with our map services that we loaded earlier, and I'm going to edit the building asset layer. Once I'm in my layer, you'll see that the layer has several tabs of its own. One of these tabs is a Reports tab, so I can click on this tab and I can add in a new report. I'm going to call this report the Building Report. I'm going to include feature maps and then I'm going to click next and then select the report template. I click finish and the report is added to my layer in my site, and I can click save site. I can also edit the report much as you can with the print, and I can turn on or off the formats that I wish to be available. So I can say PNG and JPEG, for example. I can apply these changes and then save my site. If we now run up our viewer, we can have a look at this report in action. If I go to my toolbar, we'll see that we now have a reports option available to us. So I can click on create a report, and I've got my building report here. I'm going to do a single select by point, and I'm going to click on this building here. You'll see that the building is highlighted and then the report is generated. I can click on download the report so that I can see this report. So you can see we've got a zoomed out view of the building here, a zoomed in view of the building here, some information which is coming from our database, and further information which could come from an alternative database which is non-spatial. So this might be our accounts database, for example. Reporting is very powerful as well because I can select by rectangle, and if I select by rectangle and I say, for example, select this area here, I've selected 3 buildings, and when I look at the final report I get a page per building. So there's the first building, there is the second building, and there is the third building. So that shows you the power of reports and how quickly you can add them into your sites. The next thing I'd like to talk about is adding in a workflow to your site. To add a workflow to the site, we must go back to our Geocortex Essentials Manager and select the workflows option. We then click to add a workflow. We give the workflow a name. I have a workflow which is a find my nearest option, so I'm going to use the name or set the display name to be find. I then select the workflow file that I want to use. So find my nearest. I click next and add in any attributes I need to add in at this point, and then finish to register the workflow with my site. I then need to save my site. In order to use the workflow in a viewer, I must also add the workflow to the viewer. So go to my viewers menu and edit the viewer. I'm going to put the workflow on the I want to menu. So I click on the I want to menu. I copy the defaults. Once the defaults are copied, I can then add a new menu item. This piece of text is what the user is going to see on the I want to menu. So I'm going to put find my nearest. And then I'm going to run a command which is run workflow by ID. And then I need to give the parameter, which is the display name I set before, which is find. And optionally I can give a description and or an icon. Then I click OK, and it puts my button at the bottom of the list. So I'm going to move it up to the top of the list. I'm going to click Apply Changes and then Save Site. I can then run up my viewer. Under my I want to menu, I now have Find My Nearest. I click on this and it runs my workflow. The workflow is going to prompt me to click on the map, which I'll click here. It's then going to present me with a list of layers that I can search against. I'm going to search for the nearest building asset. It then goes away and does a query and then zooms us so that the nearest building and the blue dot are displayed on the screen at the same time. So you can see in a short space of time we've managed to configure a site with some map services. We've added a print template, we've added a reports template, and we've added a workflow, and we've published and seen all those options working. Hello, my name is Chris Wright from OneSpatial. Here at OneSpatial we believe that Geocortex Essentials helps you do more with ArcGIS web mapping technologies faster, at less cost and at less risk, and we believe better. OneSpatial is the UK and Ireland distributor for Geocortex Essentials. We have a wide-ranging, large and growing portfolio of users, including the Environment Agency, United Utilities, Lambeth Borough Council and Royal Sun Alliance, to name but a few.